All right, I'm joined in studio by Otieno Namwaya, who is from the Human Rights Watch East Africa. Many thanks for making time. Welcome to Bottom Line Africa.
Pleasure.
All right, now we want to shed light on this particular report that highlights the role that activists play in this particular LAPSSET corridor project, highlighting various environmental factors that are being degraded, but how they are being suppressed in terms of speaking out and utilizing the freedom of expression, you know, which is inculcated in the Constitution. Now, perhaps let's shed light. What does this particular report have to do in terms of the LAPSSET corridor project?
This report is actually looking at the threats and the intimidation that the activists in Lamu are facing. And it highlights, as a way of background, the issues that the activists are talking about, which is a myriad of issues brought about by LAPSSET and associated projects such as the coal power plant, among others. And this include the destruction of the environment, the destruction of the mangrove forests, and the destruction of the fish breeding grounds, among others. But actually the focus of the report is more about what activists go through after talking about these issues or while talking about these issues, how the government officials on the ground respond to them. And like you mentioned just in the introduction, we came across several cases where activists have been arrested, and when they go to the police stations, for example, they are questioned about why they are opposing government projects. And while the interrogation is around that, for a few cases, when they finally end up being taken to court, you find that they've been charged with terrorism-related offenses. And that is a worrying trend in Lamu and various other parts of the country when we were doing some work in northeastern Kenya around terrorism, where it seems like the government has basically conflated the fight against terrorism with very noble activities of activists who are raising concerns, human rights concerns, which are not actually a threat to the state at all.
Now, activists are a fundamental part in any democracy, you know, highlighting various things that need to be on the spotlight, especially to the government, and also representing the needs and the rights of human beings as well, in this particular context, Kenyans. Now, you've just informed us that they're being highlighted as terrorists when they come up with various things that this particular project might be impacting negatively to the lives of the Lamu residents. Let's just go through some of the negative impacts first, and why exactly are the activists raising their voices? As we well know, LAPSSET is set to benefit not just Kenya, but the other neighboring countries as well in terms of the infrastructure put in place. But why are activists highlighting or raising the red flag in this particular project?
First of all, I think the activists are very clear that they are not opposing LAPSSET per se. They are saying you can still bring LAPSSET, you can still give us development, but respect all these issues we are raising. You can address these issues and have LAPSSET without people complaining. You can still bring development without abusing people around, without having to detain or arrest people or harass them and intimidate them. So that basically is it. To go back to your question, you're saying, what are the issues they are raising? The issues they are raising are very, very mundane, if you ask me, and issues that the government should actually be able to engage with without feeling threatened. Under the Constitution, Kenyan Constitution, and other international standards, you know, the requirement for public participation. That's one of the issues people are saying. You have brought us this project. We don't know about it. What is in it for us? When they finally begin to learn about the project, then they begin to raise these issues. Why have you? For example, at some point, LAPSSET was coming in when they were starting the port. Even the environmental impact assessment had not been done, and it is because of the voices of the activists that eventually this was done. And then the coal power plant came in, And then the Asia project assessment was done. Asia is basically environmental social impact assessment. Social impact means basically you assess the impact of that project on the livelihoods of the people. And that's the human rights angle. Initially, of course, because of the activism, this was done, but there are questions about how that was done, and I think there have been court processes around that issue. So this basically is the issue. I'm not sure I've responded to your question.
Yeah, you have responded, but
yeah.
Even as we continue taking note of various cases that arise, police actually getting hold of activists and charging them with terrorist-related offenses, just as you've mentioned, what does this tell us about the space of activism in the country right now as we speak?
You know, at some point, I think coming up to 2012, 2013, the space was expanding and people are feeling freer, people are feeling they could talk, the media could write, and activists are feeling like things could only get better. But I think after 2013, the space has been shrinking. And what we are seeing in Lamu is basically an example of what has been going on around the country, where the authorities have, I think, prioritized security at the expense of all other rights. So it seems like the police are willing to abrogate any other rights as long as they cite security concerns. And to draw you to an example of a story I saw today. Okay. In 2015, something very interesting happened. Kenyan police delisted Muhuri and Haki Africa. These are cost-based NGOs, and they were being accused of having links to Al-Shabaab, or either having links to Al-Shabaab or financing Al-Shabaab. And do you know, Muhuri and Haki Africa fought this up, went to court, and eventually they got compensated. They got court orders which allowed them to continue operating. And today what I was seeing was actually shocking. The CBK was admitting that at the time they were taking the actions to freeze the accounts, and they didn't have evidence. They were just told, this is it, and they didn't have evidence. And to this date, while all these court processes have gone on, no one has presented evidence to show that either Muhuri or Haki Africa was linked. And the reason I raise that is to show you what is happening in Lamu, where activists are accused without any evidence, and then they are taken to police stations, detained, interrogated, and threatened. And then it turns out that actually the main reason is just to make them keep quiet and stop talking about the issues they're talking about.
Well, criticism must actually be welcomed by any government, irrespective of what exactly is being criticized or the amount of investment that has been put in a particular project.
And sometimes it's not even criticism. Sometimes it's just a question of pointing out, look here, you're doing this, but you have forgotten this. Or you're doing this, but you could have done it better this way. Very, very constructive dialogue that people are asking. If you're bringing coal power plant, for example, tell us why you have decided that coal power plant is the better option as opposed to the wind or the hydro or the solar. Because the world today is moving towards a clean energy. Why do you think that coal is a better option? Just come and engage with us. They're not saying, for LAPSSET, they're not saying we don't want it. I think for coal is different. People are saying, no, we don't think that this is a good idea. But for LAPSSET, they're not saying we don't want it. LAPSSET, they're saying, please follow the right processes and please listen to us, talk to us. When you take our land, please compensate us. I think there are issues around compensation of land as well, where I think that could be a bigger issue going forward and something that probably the country needs to pay attention to, even though that was not the focus of this report.
Well, I'm speaking from the view of the government. They might argue that the end justifies the means, and hence they overlook such recommendations in terms of compensation, which has a reason in Lamu as well, in terms of the coal project. But let's pick from a positive angle. As we go forward, since you've released this particular report, what do we expect from the government going forward in terms of, yes, the LAPSSET project is set to benefit not just the residents of Lamu, but the country as well, but in light of putting in place various measures to ensure that everything is bulletproof going round, the environmental degradation is not there, the compensation in terms of land is also put in place by the necessary stakeholders, what should the government do going forward?
Before I go to that, I think I need to clarify that in human rights and governance issues,
yes,
the end can never justify the means, because there are issues of due process, and there's a reason why there's a law, there's a constitution which outlines what you need to do when you want to achieve what, and who you need to engage with, and how you need to do it. So it can never be the end justifies the means. But to go to your question, what do you expect the government to do? First of all, this kind of harassment has to stop. And then secondly, the government needs to open up and begin to engage with the communities and allow the activists to express themselves. After all, they're not breaking any law. When they break the law, that's different. We're not saying they break the law. But there is no evidence that activists have broken the law, so there's no reason why they're being harassed. Then finally, I think there have been many reports of people having been harassed or unfairly detained or unfairly arrested, or in at least 2 cases that we have mentioned, there are 2 activists whose whereabouts people don't know. And I think the starting point should be for proper investigations, for people to know who did what, and if any government official or any police officer or any military, and the problem is when the military gets involved. But the point is anybody who is involved should be held to account.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, many thanks. That is Otieno Namwaya with the Human Rights Watch, shedding light on a particular report that was released, was it yesterday?
Yes.
Yes, released yesterday by that particular body, touching on the state of activism, recommending that the government should actually put in place a few measures to ensure that the end does not justify the means, just as he put it. Many thanks for joining us.
Well, thank you.
All right.